today is how can African producers retain sovereignty while creating an attractive framework for exploration? So I'm going to kind of go into so that's kind of the premise of the debate, and I'll start with the first question. How can the industry balance the interest of IOCs and African governments to foster co-development of natural resources?
Also for governments need to be able to be flexible and to be able to sit down at the table and renegotiate the work terms and work plans that had prior been there. I'll give an example again here in Kenya. Tullow Oil had to file force majeure earlier this year, which was just lifted a few months ago, and we're now working towards the next steps. And I know this is not an isolated situation, as it is also happening around the continent. So we need to be innovative. We need to be able to sit at the table and also say, international oil companies are businesses at the end of the day, and a business is looking for profit. But when a business is looking for profit, the business environment really does come into play. And part of that now means governments must look at their tax regimes and be able to say, can we be able to change the fiscal terms for a certain extent or a certain period to be able to make it more viable for these organizations and companies to continue developing these resources? Africa, as we speak of Africa today, with the global production and the consumption of petroleum, we stand at consuming about 12%, but we also produce approximately 10%. And with this oil price, the oil price going down, the demand going down, the supply going up, what that has resulted in is for us to change how we look at that. And what I truly believe for Africa, that really does mean that even countries like Angola and Nigeria, who are very reliant on oil as to be able to peg onto their GDP for their development and their budgets, they now have had to be able to be innovative and to be able to diversify economies.
So, whether it's COVID-19, which is our most recent history, or other events, what I always come back to is I believe very strongly in contract sanctity. And the one way that we can immediately impact different governments in the country or on the continent is by repeatedly stating the importance of contract sanctity. I do not believe, Kenya actually is a great example, I do not believe that a contract should be entered into and signed by both parties, both the IOC and the government, and then be allowed to change after a short period of time. A contract has to be signed by both parties with full knowledge of what they're getting into and with full knowledge that commodity prices go up, they go down, discovered resources increases or decreases. But if you don't have a contract that is fully enforceable for a particular term, then I, as an IOC, am not going to be willing to make a major investment anywhere. That goes for South America, it goes for Africa, Australia, wherever.
What is this missing piece for African countries in terms of driving global capital to its exploration basins? South Sudan is a good example, but you can even look at larger, more mature markets like Nigeria or Angola, which obviously attract a lot of investment, but at times lose out to other areas of the world.
Africa it's not just competing with Africa, it's competing with U.S. shale, with Middle Eastern resources, Mediterranean gas.
Suriname.
Yeah, exactly. My former employer, if it hadn't been for the discoveries in Guyana, I don't think Hess would be an independent company right now. That's basically keeping them afloat. And unfortunately, it's mainly like the big 5 or 6 companies that have the capital to go and do frontier exploration in Africa. My wife's company, Total, they're blowing and going in Africa right now. They're very bullish on the continent, but they also have the capital and they have the history in Africa. And the other thing from like Total's standpoint is they also have they sell gasoline and oil and the rest of the commodities on the continent, which a lot of American companies don't do. So I think that makes a big difference. But in order to get capital back in Africa, like Danny said, it really does. It's all about capital or profit. And at current Brent prices, I just can't see a lot of companies wanting to go in and do frontier exploration anywhere on the continent. And that's unfortunate, but that's where we are right now.
But one thing that I've always been curious about is, why do you think African countries continue to seek financing outside as opposed to developing the resource themselves? We have universities in Africa, although I'd like to see an increase in the major universities, especially in South Africa. But I don't understand why the governments don't have their own NOC. There needs to be more NOCs rather than IOCs in Africa doing exploration in Africa. You don't see that much.
You know, Daniel, what you, before I go in to just give my little piece around that, Daniel, what you brought up is very important. And it actually can be tackled from 2 points, because one aspect, yes, indeed, is the national oil companies are not doing enough. And I can say this now because our national oil company here in Kenya is in the news currently, as they are trying to have a new plan because the organization, the company, the entire business mandate was completely wrong, and now they're at loss and there's debt. So it's a really bad situation. So that's also mismanagement, and mismanagement also comes from corruption. And so that aspect also has to be dealt with the African governments themselves. If we want to start working properly and we want our extra arms within the oil and gas industry as being our national companies, then we need to be able to invest, first of all, in the right kinds of skill sets of having the right people there. And also we need to get rid of corruption, because more times than not, usually the lack of business acumen and ability to fulfill projects comes down to corruption. Now,
so I think cooperation between the countries really is essential, and it needs to happen sooner than later. And I said that's, you know, it's way above my pay grade, but that's kind of my perspective as an American wanting to do more business in Africa. You know, whenever I go and look at the risk associated with projects and I advise investors on these projects, that's one of the things we look at. And it's like, you know, can we monetize a discovery? You know, in a lot of cases, unfortunately, it's no. And it's not because the oil is not there. It's not because the market's not there. It's just, it's the will of a government to work with each other to allow the molecules to get to a place where you can export them or use them internally. So I don't know what the solution to that is, other than keep hoping that governments start cooperating with each other for the benefit of their own people.